Hello everyone, welcome. In today's video will be my thoughts on the Necrons as a Chaos Space Marine and Space Marine player's perspective video. Now, my general opinion of the Necrons are that they're pretty cool. Like, they have a very cool aesthetic. They have that undead Egyptian lich mummy aesthetic that's really cool. And to that end, their models look really cool because of that aesthetic. Even their older ones, where they look kind of uh, squat or short or just oddly proportioned. Although there are some miniatures that I've seen where their models are a little with the older ones. Biggest offenders of that would be the flayed ones. Other thing that is cool and part of my general liking of the Necrons is they are the most technologically advanced faction in 40k, and that shows with their weapon profiles, with their shooting. Their guns are very lethal, hit very hard, and tend to wound, which is cool on paper and all that. And if I were to be playing Necrons, I would very much be looking forward to the shooting phase and sometimes the fight phase or charging, because some of their melee is very scary. And another general opinion I have and general liking I have towards the Necrons is that their characters, their name characters, are actually pretty cool and unique, such as Trazen the Infinite, Imhotep the Stormlord, Luminor Zeras, and the Silent King. A lot of these characters are in very interesting stories, though I've not had the pleasure of owning the books like the Infinite and the Divine to read, or I think it's the one Twice Dead King, I believe it is, that is more focused around the Silent King. But from what little information I know of the Necrons lore, as a non-Necrons player, it's all really cool, really fascinating. They have very interesting characters, and the aesthetic of the factions, it has an aesthetic, and I could definitely see why some people, when getting into 40k, like my friend Brody, just gravitate towards the Necrons. They just naturally float in that direction. Now, playing against Necrons as the Space Marines. Now, when I got into 40k tabletop, when I was learning how to play 40k through Tabletop Simulator, I decided to pick up the game as a Space Marines player. And my friend Brody, who was the one helped teach me how to play 40k, he plays Necrons. His primary army are the Necrons. Now, point number one. It feels bad to shoot at Necrons, especially if you don't target a unit of theirs with damn near everything you have. That feels really rough. It feels really rough to have a shooting phase where you are trying to target things, you're trying to split things about and prioritize targets, and either you have a really rough shooting phase and you don't hit things, you don't wound things, or everything does hit, or most of everything you have hits and most of everything you have wounds, and nothing dies. Or the whole unit doesn't die. And that feels really bad, especially when taking into consideration reanimation protocol, because if you have a squad of assault intercessors or aggressors or heavy intercessors shooting or fighting into a squad or a unit of 10 immortals, regardless if they're being led by a character, and you don't happen to kill all of those models, you're just going to come back with a slap in, all you're getting back is a slap in the face, and that doesn't feel very good, and that's kind of frustrating to deal with. Secondly, Necrons with their shooting really hurt. Their weapons, from my experience with the army I've had the fortune or misfortune to fight against the most, on average, their weapons are strength 5. Strength 5, AP -1, damage 1. Because I believe it's the Tesla carbines that the immortals I've had the displeasure of fighting have the Tesla carbines, and those are strength 5. What is it? It's 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP -1, damage 1, with assault and sustained hits 2. So getting shot at by those is really painful, and especially if you have the misfortune of being overwatched and then overwatched again by a Hexmark destroyer, because hey, those immortals that when they're overwatching you that are hitting on sixes, yeah, if any of those guys hits, not only do they hit you, but they have sustained hits too. Not to mention that there's a Hexmark Destroyer, overwatching you and hitting on twos instead. And if I'm not mistaken, their guns are a Hexmark Destroyer's guns are strength 5 average. Thirdly, Necrons on average being toughness 5 in that general ballpark, with on average invuln saves with strength 5 to 8 weapons, feels rough to deal with as a Space Marines player. Now, I'm also speaking about this in a very general sense. From my experience fighting Necrons, most of what I've dealt with as a newer, in the beginning, and as still a newer player, the Necron units I've been fighting are around toughness 5. They have invuln saves or feel no pains, and they are wielding strength 5 to 8 weapons. That is rough, especially just given that Space Marines are average toughness 4, 3 up save. Their guns on average are strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. So that is rough. And lastly, for units, Illuminar Zeres, Canoptic Wraiths, and Immortals terrify me. Illuminar Zeres has no right to be so deadly in melee, and the fact that he has lone up makes it very irritating to try to shoot him, especially if you are running into an army like I have been, where there's a very real threat of being double overwatched when you try to get something in position to shoot him or to charge him. And then with Canoptic Wraiths, they terrify me, or they're not, I'd say terrify me, more they generally scare me and irritate me because they just don't die. And in my experience, that's also been because my friend Brody, who plays Necrons, he has a unit of 6 Canoptic Wraiths, and they're led by, I believe, a Technomancer, or it might be an Overlord with a Resorb, and they just don't die. They don't die in shooting. They don't die in melee, which is where they want to be. He plays them very conservatively because he's always my friend Brody's always scared of me shooting them off the board with whatever tank vehicles I have as Space Marines or Chaos Space Marines. And then Immortals just generally irritate me. They make me frustrated because they are a more elite battle line unit that have far better shooting, in my opinion, than Space Marines. And not just Space Marines, but also I'd even say like other armies and their battle line units, like the Voton, potentially even the Tau. Although the Tau I'm a little less familiar with playing against them because I've only ever played against them once. But there's that. Now, playing against the Necrons as a Chaos Space Marine player, my previous points from the last page, or last panel, still apply. Illuminar Zeres, Immortals, Canoptic Wraiths, they're all still a massive thorn in my side, massive pain in my ass, right? Getting double Overwatch still really sucks as Chaos Space Marines. I would say even more so because, at least with the kind of army I've played, which is in creation, or with the creations of Bile Detachment, and it's more melee oriented, it is more painful to have something like Chosen, Possessed, Legionnaires, or even Vashtor get overwatched. Now, to this point, it's odd, from my experience, Chaos Space Marines feel better to play as when you're fighting Necrons than Space Marines. Now, and this feels strange to me because in terms of general profiles, like strength, toughness, wounds, saves, movement, objective control, leadership, all of it's generally pretty similar to standard loyalist Space Marines. But what I feel is what makes it feel better to me is Dark Pact as a army rule for Chaos Space Marines feels better to utilize against Necrons than Oath of Moment does. because I can at any point in the shooting or fight phase pick and choose, hey, when do I want a Dark Pact and give these chosen sustained hits, or my Forge Fiend sustained hits, or I believe even Vashtor sustained hits or lethal hits. On top of the fact being that it also might play into Chaos Space Marines as an army are more aggressive, so they already can naturally play into or against Necrons and it feel better because they want to jump down their throat sooner, whereas Space Marines can do that, but you need to specifically build into it. On top of and I'll get into this into a video into a future video of why I chose Chaos Space Marines over Space Marines, is I feel like the problem with Space Marines in this regard against Necrons is the over specialization of units does not help. And in my experience, when playing against the Necrons as Chaos Space Marines, standout units against them have been chosen because they're very mobile and their melee is actually quite respectable and scary because they mostly wield power weapons. Vashtor the Archfane, he's just a absolute unit in my experience. He's basically a demon prince. He hits really freaking hard. If any, especially against my friend Brody, Vashtor has been double overwatched, and in that double overwatch, managed to kill a majority of a unit of immortals because they hazardous themselves. And the Hexmark, I think, even took some mortal wounds. Legionnaires, from my experience against Necrons, have been an absolute pain in my friend's side because in one of the matches we had, he had a squad or a unit of, I think it was 6 Locust Destroyers plus a Locust Lord, and they weren't allowed to do any shooting because the entire time that they were around, I had Legionnaires just down those guys' throat, and anytime that they would fight those Legionnaires and like fall back or run away, I would just have those Legionnaires keep pressing the advance. They were also fighting on an objective, so that also really helped. And lastly, for units that have been standout units for me, have been the Predator Destructors. Now, in the past, I've ran 2 of these. I've since swapped out the Predator Destructors for Forge Fiends. I might switch back. Haven't gotten too much time to test it and to get a feel for the difference. But in my experience with the Predator Destructors, I've managed to almost take down a Doomsday Arc on my first turn of shooting because of my friend's poor deployment with his Doomsday Arc. Now, my closing thoughts on Necrons as a Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine player. In terms of their visuals, in terms of their lore, their aesthetic, their characters, very interesting. I like the Necrons in that sense. If they were able to not wake up with basically super dementia and would stop infighting with themselves, there is a very real possibility that the Necrons could come out as a big powerhouse and or victor in the wars that are happening in Milky Way. From a tabletop perspective, however, I find them to be incredibly annoying to deal with. Now, I am also speaking to this as a Space Marines player. I'm not speaking a Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine player. I can't give my thoughts on the Necrons as a Tau player or as an Orc player or World Eaters player. I'm sure, depending on what army you're playing as that aren't Space Marines into Necrons, your opinions may vary. And to that frustration, to what makes the Necrons just generally annoy me is, unlike other armies I've had the pleasure of fighting against, the Tau, Orcs, Tyranids, and even the Imperial Guard, there always feels like there's a healthy level of back and forth between myself and my opponent. It's not just I can't move up and do anything without getting shot in the butt, effectively. And not only can I take units off of the board, but my opponent can take units of mine off the board, and there's just a healthy level of back and forth. And I feel as though Necrons don't allow for that to happen if you were a non-Necrons player. And I can only imagine how that feels if it's Necrons versus Necrons. Excuse me. Now, thirdly, Hexmark Destroyers are really annoying when they're near Immortals and Illuminor Zeras. In my experience, I've dealt with an army of Necrons that have two 10-man units of Immortals led by two separate characters. Illuminor Zera standing near this blob of guys, and there's one Hexmark Destroyer that's next to Illuminor Zera's and the Immortals, and there's another Hexmark Destroyer in Deep Strike waiting to just jump down and be annoying. And from my experience, what makes the Hexmark Destroyers out of everything, I'd say more annoying than anything else, is that they can overwatch and they hit on twos. Regardless if, and this is regardless if, oh, you had another unit overwatch something. No, you can overwatch with Immortals. They do their shooting. Okay, cool, great. And then you have a Hexmark Destroyer just be that absolute jerk, and he overwatches for free, and he's shooting at whatever just moved or charged, and they're hitting on twos. So in my experience, that's been very frustrating to deal with. It's made me get genuinely irritated, and I told my friend this. I'm like, dude, like, your army's annoying. Like, this is not, like, this doesn't feel fun to generally deal with, because it feels like I like, if I do anything, I get punished. Like, if I move, punishment. Charge, punishment. Shoot, punishment, because nothing dies and just things come back. Lastly, Awakened Dynasty is, from my experience against my friend Brody, has just generally been an annoying detachment, and this is especially the case with the Eternal Revenant, or Protocol of the Eternal Revenant stratagem. I've had in the one memorable game I had with Chaos Space Marines against my friend, I managed to take down some characters, or I think it was one character was able to be killed that turn, and then they just came back. And that really, really pissed me off. Like, it took so much effort just to get rid of the Immortals that the two characters were attached to, and then I finally take down one of the characters. I believe it was an Overlord, and then it just comes back next turn for one command point, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. That is very, very frustrating to deal with. Like, you do not know how much I was seething about that. But with that, that is the conclusion of my general thoughts and opinions on Necrons as a Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine player. Feel free to give your opinion about Necrons in the comment section below, regardless of what faction you play as. If you play as Necrons and fight other Necrons, or if you're a guardsman fighting Necrons, feel free to tell me your general opinions and experiences down below in the comments. And if you have any tips for Necrons or other armies, feel free to leave them in the comments. And once again, if you guys want to know, if you guys want to see more content like this in the future, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section, and feel free to give a like on the video. I'd very much appreciate it. Thank everyone for watching and listening. And hope you guys have a great day, and also hope you guys have a wonderful time on the tabletop. Until next time.